Then,
Up to you.
then
Yeah,
after the meeting, I have a letter that I typed up that bond counsel is requiring that you sign, because these letters, and Jean had to do one too, will be out at the town meeting for taxpayers. And I did bring extra copies of this,
What is that?
the thing you asked me for about the reconciliation of the streetscape money.
Super, because we may have some board members that have questions.
I think I sent it to everybody
Okay, when did you send it? This afternoon?
yesterday afternoon. Did you not get it? Because I got a thank you from Jim and I got a thank you from Jason.
No, I didn't.
That's okay.
And it's been nuts.
But the bottom line is, this is recording. I don't think I want it to be recording.
Could someone let Nancy know that there's no audio, that she's muted?
Again, we'll try. Can you hear us at home?
We can now.
Super. Okay. Great. So we're going to adjourn the Board of Finance meeting to the town hearing on the budget. But what I wanted to say was the process is going to be a bit lumpy because of the technology. And when people in this room are speaking, no one on Zoom can speak. Where usually Zoom meetings are very interactive with people, but because of the way things had to be set up tonight, if the people on Zoom are speaking, they will not hear anything that is being said in this room. So we're going to have to be very methodical about recognizing people on Zoom and giving them an opportunity to speak after you all have had an opportunity to speak. We're going to try and keep the commentary the first time, give your name and address, and try and keep your comments or questions to 3 minutes or less until everyone has had an opportunity to comment or ask their questions. And the same will be for those at home, just as a matter of courtesy to your fellow Kentites. So, and with that, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to our first selectman.
We have one person online who's asking if we can increase the volume. We went up very loud.
Should I talk louder?
I was given a little pearls of wisdom from a sound expert that the closer you get to the microphone, the better people can hear you. Seems obvious, but. So I just want to go over, we had some, what my father would have called rules of engagement, but we're going to call rules of the day. And I just want to go over that briefly, because again, as Nancy said, we have a lot of technology here. Barbara, how many people do we have here virtually on the participant list?
31.
So we have 31, probably 50 people all told, but more than half, way more than half are attending virtually. So we do need to it's going to be a process, and we appreciate everybody's patience. So just some housekeeping. The meeting proceedings are being recorded and the chat is public record. If you will, out in the virtual world, please stay on mute to avoid disruptions. If the Zoom stops for any reason, if you get cut off, if it suddenly comes to an end, if some rain cell comes through and we lose power, please just rejoin using the link that was on the agenda. And we're encouraging folks, if they're comfortable with the feature, to put questions in chat. We will have question and answer at the end of each presentation, but we do need to be pretty methodical about that. And most of all, please be patient as we flow through all the technical challenges. And a big thanks to our tech expert, who you can't see, but is doing a lot of work behind the scenes, sort of the Wizard of Oz here, Michael J., who does a lot of work for the Library Association. We're all here to have a productive conversation, hear from you all, and do what's best for our community. So let's all make sure that we treat each other with respect and collegiality, and just keep in mind that we're all in this together. The 22-23 budget season has been a journey for all of us, and I'm going to stop here quick and make sure that everybody in the virtual world can hear me okay. Just give a thumbs up in your window. Thank you, Fran. I can see you. Municipal budgeting is not for the faint of heart. It's a steep learning curve, and I want to thank all the not-for-profit civic organizations, Kent Volunteer Fire Department, Kent Memorial Library, and especially all the various departments here in town government for coming to the table with thoughtful new projects, and as always, lean bottom lines. You may have heard me say over the last few months that our government and our community is on a precipice of sorts. We're a small rural town, but there's growth that is happening, as we all know, and also growth that needs to happen. It's been about 780 days, yes, I have an app for that, or 111 weeks since our community began dealing with the biggest public health emergency in its history. Yes, 111 weeks and counting. Throughout the last 2+ years, we've seen very difficult times, and again, we've also seen growth. Growth in new neighbors, growth in more visitors, more building, more needs. For a town to be resilient, we need to adapt. We continue to see that growth, which brings me to the major drivers of the proposed Board of Selectmen budget. The first is staffing. We're lucky to have longevity in our town government employees, but we've also seen a number of vacancies. Social Services Director, Park and Rec Director, and the upcoming potential retirement of our Land Use Administrator. Attracting qualified, top-notch candidates in today's employment environment meant we had to make changes to stay competitive. These are good long-term investments in our community. I hope you've had a chance to meet Jared, the new Park and Rec Director, who I'm pretty sure is in the meeting virtually from his home near Kent, New York, coincidentally enough, who's been doing amazing work. I know there's some little ones, hi Kennedy, in the back of the room, who have already met Jared and have had a chance to interact with him in the many new programs that he's starting. Our other full-time employee, which we brought from a part-time position to a full-time position, is the Social Services Director. Samantha Hassan-Flew has come to us from just south of here, and she's been here about a month and a half, and hopefully you'll have a chance to meet her soon too. Department of Public Works, Rick also requested an increase to move one employee into a supervisor position. And with the increase of administrative duties that Rick has had to take on, this is a smart decision. It also creates another level for folks to move up within DPW. Another major driver, probably the biggest one in a very, very long time for the town, is the funding for EMS staffing. It's widely known that volunteers are becoming more and more difficult to recruit and retain in emergency medical services. The pandemic caused a large exodus nationally of EMTs and a huge shortage of new ones. No one wanted to take the risk of getting into the back of an ambulance during this time. But the KVFD and the town have a statutory requirement to provide at least 2 certified personnel on every EMS call, no matter what. The KVFD came to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance just over 2 years ago to begin this conversation of hiring outside staff to ensure coverage for the town. Last year, they began using a staffing company to fill shifts that members were unable to fill. This year, their initial ask was $492,000, the biggest driver in the budget. The Board of Finance came back and asked, ultimately, the Board of Selectmen to go back and dig a little bit deeper, sharpen their pencil, and remove or reduce $140,000 from our proposed budget that we proposed to them. Coming back with our best faith ever, a number of late nights, a lot of conversation, we were able to bring back a reduction plan of just over $170,000. One of the biggest numbers in reduction for this $170,000 was in the EMS staffing. This also meant other significant sacrifices in already lean budgets to emergency management, to the Department of Public Works, to the Registrar's Office, to the litigation line, the Cemetery Association, and the Chore Service. But line by line, the Board of Selectmen worked together to make the cuts needed and went the extra mile to not only give back a reduction of $140,000, but to come back with over $170,000. The budget you have before you is the result of conversation, sometimes spirited, but always trying to find the balance between being good fiscal partners and recognizing that growth. I thank you for the time to bring this conversation to open this evening. And we're going to first take a look and see if there are questions in the chat from Barbara's world.
See any raised hands?
So we'll take questions from folks in the room. I know Mike Govel already warned me that he was going to have questions. And if folks in the room have questions, we'll need you to come up to the microphone. And as Nancy asked, to please state your name and your address.
For the record, Mike Govel, 25 Hidden Meadow Road, South Kent.
Give us 1 second. I just want to make sure with Michael that we're hearing him. Okay, great.
Okay. Should I come back and forth? Because I've got like a bunch of questions and you want me to try and stick it to 3 minutes.
Are they all for the Board of Selectmen, Mike?
Pardon me?
Are they all for the Board of Selectmen?
Yes.
Well,
So-
why don't you
Okay,
get started? and
okay,
we'll-
so I'm going to start with the Highway Department. Last year, I understand that there were 2 roads that were on the repair list that didn't get repaired, and the budget for that was $150,000. The pipe over at Common Park has been bad for I don't know how many years. I'm curious why this doesn't get fixed anytime. That's not that expensive. My understanding, the reasoning for that was lack of time. And I see in this year's proposed budget that there's $160,000 for 2 road repairs. My question is, why is he asking for more this year if he didn't have time to do 2 last year, and he'll probably only have time to do 2 this year? So I'm a little curious why he's looking for another $160,000 when he didn't have time before. How's he going to have time this year when it's half the year's over with already? That's as far as the Highway Department goes, especially now that he's 1 employee short, from what I understand, because they hired a new guy earlier, and I guess they released him here a month or so ago. So with a man short, how's he going to do that? And if he's going to get all 4 done, great. But if he's not going to get all 4 done, I don't think he should get the $160,000 in his proposed budget, personally. There are a lot of other little questions, like people who are voted in for office, we cannot tell them what hours to work, I understand. Is that true?
It's a tough question.
This was the previous first selectman told me that. So I just want to, I don't know I just want to make sure it's true, because if it's true, I'd really love to know the hours that some of the people that are asking for a lot more money have been working. And I know the listed hours for some of them, but I tend to see them not there during those listed hours. And if the listed hours are correct, they're getting paid well. Just curious, how can we say we're going to pay you X amount of money, but we don't know the hours you're going to work to earn it? And I'm not pointing at you, I'm in general, okay? So I'm a little concerned that a lot of people are asking for money and not showing us the time and not showing us that they're earning the money. The porta potty, the portable toilet, the Welcome Center increased to 20,000, a 12,500 increase. That seems to be a pretty large increase in a year. 20, when it was only 7,500 last year, and they want 20 this year.
Right, so that was corrective. That wasn't properly budgeted in the last
Okay.
budget season.
I mean, is
Mike,
that just custodial, or is that to pay for the water and the sewage and all that, or and the lighting? I'm not sure.
99% custodial. I mean, that's where
because it's it's more than 100% jump, and I'm just
So
It's a
Mike,
huge jump.
you're down to 30 seconds. So you
Okay.
might need to save a couple for
Okay,
another
well, I'm
go
gonna,
around.
then I'm gonna go to the KCS budget. I haven't had time because I just got their breakdown over here.
If you can hold that, because we're going to have Scott and Jen come
You
up.
bet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Is Rick on, Rick Osborne?
He is, and I asked him if he wanted to respond, and he said if the Board of Finance wants him.
Well, I think that people are here to gather information, so I think that that would be most appropriate.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so
Sorry.
Rick is now
Hello.
unmuted.
So much for the timer.
Rick?
Can you hear me or not? I lost Nancy's audio. I don't know. The $10,000 Michael was talking about was in the asphalt line, I believe. Was the line he was talking about, and that just covers the cost of pavement when we contract out pavers.
Rick, Mike's question had also to do with two roads. It was about 160,000 for, that were in the current budget for two roads that didn't get repaired and the culvert at Kent Commons. If you can just follow up on those two things and give Michael 3 seconds to swap out the audio. Thanks.
All right, that increase in that line, you're hearing me or no? Okay. The increase in that line was just the cost of asphalt when we contract to have roads paved. It wasn't for any particular road.
So the question that you asked, Mike, was about two road projects that. And those were in the operating, those would have been in the capital plan, right? What were the two roads?
It says two rows, two rows this year.
Barbara, do you know which line we're at? Okay.
Asphalt's the last line in the operating budget.
Regular budget, because there isn't any roads in the capital.
Are you talking, there's line 298, like, that's the town roads asphalt line? That's 160,000.
Yeah, down at the bottom, 298. That's in the budget at 100,000 roads. This year, there's 160 proposed budget. My question is, how are you gonna do all four when you couldn't do two of them? You can't do all.
So where are you seeing the two roads?
Line 298 of the highway department.
Right, that's town, it says town roads asphalt.
That's all the asphalt purchased.
Town roads, okay. So,
It's not specific road projects per se.
I understand there were two roads that didn't fix last year. So where that line would be then?
For the two road projects, we'd have to get the names of the roads. Those are both in the capital plan for,
Excuse me. The Zoom people are saying that if someone from the audience is speaking, they need to come to the mic because the Zoom people can't hear.
thank you,
They can only
Barbara.
hear you.
Thank you. So Mike's question further was about the Botsford Road project and the Spooner Hill project. Those are both slotted in fiscal year 25 for the capital plan.
They can't be done until they're funded. They can't be done until the funding is set aside for them. So a little bit of the funding is set aside each year.
Can you come up to the mic so we can make sure that everybody hears everything? Thanks.
I'm afraid I must have been misinformed. My understanding was those two roads were supposed to be done last year. And that's what someone informed me, that obviously I was misinformed, and I apologize. So,
If you look at the back page of the budget booklet, it has the capital
Okay.
plan detail,
okay,
and it will provide you with more specific
Okay.
information about the roads.
thank you for correcting me.
And I know that Rick has the culvert at Kent Commons on a priority list. More questions from the in-person?
Hello, everyone. Matt Starr, 12 Good Hill Estates. My first question, I guess, is to the Board of Selectmen. The fire department asked for $492,000 for EMS staffing because of numerous reasons and us not being able to fulfill everything we had to. And now it's cut back to $130,000, when I believe at your last selectmen's meeting, it was forecasted to be like 135 or 138 just this year, just to finish this year. So we're already going to go over budget. What is the solution you guys prepared when you made that cut? How are you planning to fund or provide EMS coverage for Kent?
So the Board of Finance has, at a few meetings, said publicly that they know that it's required. They know that we need to provide coverage and make sure that the ambulance gets out, and they're confident that if the fire department comes back to the Board of Finance and requests more funding, that they would be able to find that funding. And the reason why we put it at 130 was because it was the projected for this year.
So rather than the taxpayers having the opportunity to decide whether they want that funded in the budget, it would have to go back. Fire department would have to ask again. The Board of Finance would have to decide again if they want to fund it. And then it would have to go back to another town meeting. Is that correct?
So Matt, the Board of Finance is monitoring the monthly expenditures for EMS staffing to watch it. And we've made it very clear to many people that if there are more funds necessary, the last thing we want to do is not have that ambulance be able to show up at somebody's door. We get that. But to go ahead and earmark over $400,000 because it might be needed, and then to tax the taxpayers in town for it and then not need all of it, just did not seem to be appropriate at this time.
Just with that in mind, I kind of figured that would be the answer. So there's 200,000 sitting in an account for town garage siding, for the town garage. There's 200,000 sitting in an account for Studio Hill improvements. This is all funded in last year's budget, fully funded in the capital plan, just sitting there, doing nothing. It's ridiculous that the town of Kent would rather have money sitting in the DPW budget. There's money in here, 30,000 for the town garage parking lot, fully funded. 24,000, town garage overhead doors. Another 171,000 for bridge. There's just hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. When you say you don't want to earmark money, what better to earmark it for is EMS. People want to know when they need the ambulance, It's not a question, is the fire department strapping together to try and get volunteers to cover the calls? They want to know the ambulance is prepared, it's funded, and they're ready to go. So I ask you to rethink your stance and fully fund it to the 492 like we asked. It's important. People deserve to have immediate, prompt ambulance coverage. You may have coverage right now, but you're stressing out a handful of people that are trying to cover all these shifts. And sooner or later, those people, we've seen it in the past. I've seen it, I've been in the department almost 40 years. When you get to this little teeny group of 10 people trying to cover all these shifts, all of a sudden there's a breaking point. Somebody drops off, puts even more stress on people. It goes quick. It doesn't just happen over a long period of time where you guys can have meetings and discuss it and think about it. There's no reason why, rather than having all this money in the capital plan for roads or siding on a building, you can't fully fund that 492. It doesn't mean the fire department gets it, because every bill has to come to the town and it's reimbursed. There's no reason not to fully fund this so that we can have the best ambulance coverage in the northwest corner. Thank you.
Further questions? I see Alan. Sure. Come on up. Just state your name and your address. Thanks.
Alan Govel. Right now I'm representing the fire department as chief of department. We very much appreciate when we had to come to you a couple years ago, as was referenced and in your review, Gene, and the Board of Finance, and you guys sprang into action as if your pagers were going off also to help fund the coverage and the strain and stress that's happening. So I want to thank you for that and so forth. And so we did come forward in the budget request, so that way we would turn it over to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, letting you know where we currently were with what it would cost for and I know a lot of you know this, so I want to say this so everybody at the public hearing can know this. You have millions of dollars that you have to fund in tax, the residents and taxpayers of Kent on. So to balance that. And we do appreciate your commitment, as you referenced and have said that, and thank you for making it public at other times and here at the hearing, that you'll be able to come back and find that money if it's needed. So what we had done at your request, or I think it was a Board of Selectmen's initial request, is we used the model that we're using with the staffing model, where we have the shifts covered with members of the Kent Volunteer Fire Department and then with the staffing agency. And we came up with a different number than what it would be to fully fund, as you had requested, following the current staffing model with projections for this coming fiscal year. And so that was then I think the initial number that was submitted to you. So the fire department, at its monthly meeting of the entire membership that was able to attend on Monday night, we discussed this at length. And so I'm here specifically on behalf of that meeting and the members of the fire department that are asking you to reconsider your amount that you have in the budget to go with, or at least budget for, the projected staffing model. And that is the number of $224,250. I understand, and thank you for clarifying for the public, where you came up with the current number in the budget based upon what is happening now, and you have been following that. And as we've been working with you since around December, when we had some medical situations affect our current staff. And so you were able to be prepared for this current year, with that. But this staffing model is based on, as we had explained before, information that we have about our membership and members for this whole next year, where some will not be returning, not able to renew their certifications. We are encouraged because we do have a new member that just joined that is already an EMT. We do have 2 members that joined recently that are in EMT class. I think we discussed that before. We attempted to take some of those calculations into this projection. So it is a projection, because things can change, as you know, and as you've already reacted to. So again, with that, but to be about $100,000 short going into the budget where our projections are, I think, pretty close. We're very, very concerned. The membership, again, discussed that, and we would ask you to see what else you can do with the budget. Nobody wants a percent, a mill increase or anything like that if it can be avoided. But if there are other ways to look at that, to get this number around that 225, because we really are seeing that happen with the schedule. And just as a point, there's 56 shifts per week, okay? And of those, 33 of those in this projection are covered by Kent Volunteer Fire Department members. So it's 23 that we're looking at, projecting out. And somebody had asked, so I'll just see if you asked, well, if it got broken down into an hourly, wage, which is in that numbers, that's exactly what it is. We're projecting $31.25 an hour to pay to a staffing company, per hour. So that's where that is. So it's a cost to have a single EMT, paid as it comes in from the staffing company. That's staff only. Ambulance, fuel, insurance, tires, maintenance, supplies, everything all comes out of the fire department operating budget, separately. So again, I would leave you with, please, if there's any way, and the department members discussed it, get it back to where we're projecting, so that way there's a somewhat of a safety cushion in there and don't have to go back to, the taxpayers or another hearing if it should happen, or a town meeting. Any questions? Otherwise, again, thank you for your support.
Do we want to see if there are questions via Zoom?
There's no raised hands, and I don't see any in the chat.
Nancy, I'm going to defer to you. Where you'd like to go next?
I think the Board of Selectmen,
Board of Ed?
excuse me, the water went down the wrong way.
Oh, no.
Sure.
Matt Starr again, 12 Good Hill Estates. I wasn't sure if I was allowed to speak about more than one topic with the time limit. Another issue that I've asked repeatedly year after year is the Botsford Road project. In 2019, the Board of Selectmen pushed it back a year in the capital plan. I was assured by it that time, First Selectman Bruce Adams, that he would correct that and move it back up. That's never been done, and I've been asking year after year to have it moved back up one more year like it should be. It was side by side with Studio Hill. They were both put in the capital plan at the exact same time. I don't know why Studio Hill took precedence. It's been fully funded. It's got $200,000 in there. Nothing's been done. Last I inquired, there hadn't even been any preparations to do anything. Gene, is there any reason why we can't move Botsford back up?
I'm going to defer to the Board of Finance on this.
Okay.
It has to do with the funding and how the funding flows through the capital plan. So once it enters the last 5 years in the capital plan, it flows through there. And if we're having, if we're trying not to increase the budget, sometimes it gets stretched out where it'll be split. It might be in 2 years and then we split it between 3, as an example. But as far as what was done in 2019, it's not like you can go ahead and leapfrog ahead, because those dollars have not been set aside for Botsford Road yet. So to say, well, we want to go in front of all the others that have been lined up, we can't do that at this point. The Board of Finance has been unwilling to do that. We have not even discussed it.
I'm not asking for it to leapfrog ahead. I'm asking for it to be put back in the position it was originally. It was moved back a year because at the time it was another year where they didn't want to have an increase. That's always the reason. We don't want to have an increase. We want to keep everything flat.
Right, it was too big an increase that year. I'm sure that's what it was, yeah.
And from the first selectman and from the road foreman, we're getting no assistance. And Botsford Road has huge puddles year-round, huge runoff problems. Their engineer has confirmed that. Bruce Adams and Rick both confirmed that. Yet nothing's being done. I mean, you have to call to get the road patched, let alone anything else. I'm asking for some help here. Why can't we take the 200,000 from the Studio Hill project that just seems to be sitting dormant and use that towards Botsford?
I think that is a question for your Board of Selectmen.
You're up.
And not to bounce it off, but I just want to get Rick on Zoom to understand what's happening with the Studio Hill project, and if there's any way to swap those two projects. Is one, we're 3 years after that 2019 movement of the Botsford Road, out 1 year. Is the priority changed for the two roads where those two things could get swapped?
When it was funded, the Studio Hill was put in a year where we could afford to put that much in that year because it's 200. Botsford is 345. Studio Hill was funded last year. We didn't get to it last summer, so we'll be working on it this year. Is the plan, but so as far as pre-funding, we usually don't pre-fund anything unless we get grant money from the state or something for a bridge. Then, because of the limitations on the grant, we ask that it get pre-funded, but this is all town money that we're dealing with, so we're not pre-funding that. I hope that answers Matt's question or not, but.
And just to ask the question, and Rick, I asked this question via email, can we get the engineer to do a reassessment of Botsford Road? Just to, imagine the engineering was done probably 2018, 2019, it's 3-4 years later. Can we get the engineer out there to do another assessment?
You can come out and do an assessment, but until we put drainage in, unless somebody's willing to let us make a road cut off on the edge where the water used to go, then it's going to keep puddling down the end there in the low spot. So if you want to spend the money on an engineer, I'll have him come out and look at it again. But
I think that makes sense to at least have an engineer come out and do a reassessment. And then we have to have a conversation at the Board of Selectmen and have a conversation with the Board of Finance to see if there's any way to accelerate the project. I don't know if that's even ever been done without a grant behind it.
Not to my knowledge.
So we're gonna.
What about using undesignated funds? That's a huge fund balance.
Deferring to you, Nancy.
So the undesignated fund was used this year to not raise the mill rate. If we dig into it any further, it will affect our bond rating. So that's why, and also part of it is the undesignated fund balances to cover X amount of time. Was it 2 months, Barbara, of operating costs for the community should there be some sort of a disaster? And that's part of how bond rating companies look at towns. Are they prepared that they could handle a bad situation?
I understand that, but I thought the undesignated fund that every year we vote whether or not to use doesn't always get used. Like last year, I was under the understanding it didn't get used.
Yes, but then it remains in the undesignated fund and it's being used again to keep this year flat.
So why don't we, instead of putting it at the back end of the budget, put it directly into the capital plan, then right at the beginning of the year and use it, rather than, it's like the Board of Finance is keeping control on this whole account. And are we really using it to offset the budget? Or are we telling the taxpayers, you can't have this, you can't have that, and then it doesn't even get used? I really think
Well,
you're over manipulating that fund a little bit. I don't see why we can't put that fund in right at the get-go and get some of these projects done. It's really unfortunate that we're looking at a budget that, of course, there was a bunch of raises done, talking about putting another supervisory position at the town highway. Town highway really wasn't, I mean, there is so much money being dumped in the town highway. Why aren't we digging into that? Cut back that, not EMS, not, I don't even want to be up here asking for money for Botsford Road every year. It's just ridiculous that I have to keep coming and asking. And I go throughout the roads in Kent, whether it's driving a fire truck or driving my personal vehicle, they're all in dire need of improvement. So maybe put the undesignated money this year into the capital plan and let's get some of these projects done. Hire subcontractors and just get these projects moving. Please.
Scanning the room for hands. Barbara, if you want to scan the Zoom room.
I don't see any questions in the chat and nobody's hand.
Okay. Gonna hand off to Scott Trabucco for the Board of Education.
Thank you, Jean. Is that okay? Can you hear me? Okay. Before Jen presents our budget, I'd just like to say a couple things. This year, Kent Center School has continued to provide a supportive, nurturing environment for our students and deliver a first-class education as shown by our state summative test results. Because of our hardworking administration, dedicated staff, and supportive community, the school has continued to achieve success, and the taxpayers of Kent have a right to be extremely proud of the education we are providing our children. During the budget process, there were a couple of comments made by the public expressing the opinion that the Board of Education spends a lot of money unnecessarily. One of the examples given to support the spending argument was our purchase of a small bus several years ago. That bus not only allows teachers to take advantage of local field trip opportunities that may have been overlooked in the past due to the cost of a regular school bus, it's also a good example of how we work to save money. We've been able to use that bus to do things like take our sports teams to away games instead of needing a regular school bus, saving a considerable amount of money each time. We estimate that in all, it has saved the town over $12,000 in its roughly 2 years of use. The Board of Education is always looking for ways to save the town money, not spend it unnecessarily. We recently completed a solar energy deal, which will potentially save the town $200,000 over the next 20 years. We are also currently exploring the possibility of forming a nonprofit enrichment program for the school that would be self-funded so that we can expand opportunity without increasing the budget. We recognize the responsibility the Board of Finance has to balance the needs of the town with the ability to pay for those needs. And the Board of Education has always worked to analyze our budgets in order to make sure that we are maintaining the integrity of our educational process while at the same time keeping costs as low as possible. At the request of the Board of Finance, we worked very hard to significantly underspend our budgets during the first 2 years of the pandemic in order to give the town as much financial flexibility as possible during uncertain times. We were disappointed this year to have our budget cut so deeply. Despite submitting a budget with only a 1.5% overall increase at a time when our health insurance costs are rising by 10% and our heating oil costs are rising by 37%. The magnitude of the cut forced us to make decisions about staffing that we're afraid are not in the best long-term interest of the school or the town. Kent Center School is very highly regarded by parents in the community, and one of the most valued aspects of our school is its educational environment. The New England School Development Council, which provides enrollment projections to member districts based on recorded births and estimated growth, is predicting a 24% increase in enrollment at KCS over the next 8 years. And we believe that preserving the integrity of our educational environment is very important to the future growth, and are concerned that the push to prematurely reduce staff is short-sighted. So for that reason, we respectfully request that the Board of Finance consider restoring $60,000 to the 2022-2023 Board of Education budget. And now Jen will give a quick overview of that budget.
Thank you, Scott. I didn't realize I was that much shorter than you. Okay, so anybody that doesn't have a copy of the budget, there are copies on the table. If anybody wants to follow along. Oh, okay, sorry, is that better? Okay. I'm gonna hit the highlights. If there's questions when I'm done, we can address specific questions. The overall budget for Kent Center School is $4.78 million. It's about a $95,000 increase over last year for just over a 2% increase. Including the regional budget, it's $7.2 million, about a $32,000 increase, or a half of a percentage point increase. Okay, so now I'm just going to hit sort of the summary lines. Total certified personnel was just below a 2% increase, which equates to about $38,000. Total professional non-certified staff was a 5% increase, about $5,000. Total non-certified personnel, just about a $40,000 increase, or 6.5%. So total salaries, just over $6,000, 0.23% increase. Employee benefits, almost 8.5% increase, or about $75,000. Professional and technical services, about 5.5% increase, just over $1,000. Purchased property services, $2,100, or 1.6%. Other purchase services, $1,100, 0.28%. Total supplies, a little over 5%, or $14,000. Total property, a decrease of $1,500, or just under 4%. Dues and fees was a substantial decrease, percentage-wise, at almost 20%, or $2,500. So again, that brings our total to $4.7 million, a $95,000 increase, or just about 2%. And then the last page includes the regional expenditures, which are just itemized by the 3 regional budget lines. Any questions? I don't know, Nancy, if you want to do Zoom first or the room. I don't see any hands in the room right now. Mike, you want me to call on them, Nancy, or do you do that?
You can do that, Jen.
Okay, Mike.
You come up to the microphone, though, so everyone can hear you at home, please.
Hi, Mike Covell, again. How many teachers are there? Not substitutes, but how many full-time teachers?
Classroom, or including specials like art and music and?
Classroom.
16 for first through eighth, plus kindergarten.
And 1 kindergarten.
What?
Okay. And 1 kindergarten.
So 18.
So the first, the 1.8 million is for those teachers, or does that include the special ed teachers?
The 1.8, so some special ed teachers, or when you say special ed, do you mean?
I don't know, you said there were just teachers, or you said special ed or special classes?
Well, special classes, meaning, you know,
Language.
we have a librarian, we have a music teacher, we have an art teacher.
Okay, does that include those?
Any certified staff.
Okay,
So anyone that has a teaching certificate
okay,
is in the
So you're
certified
You're
personnel.
around 20, right? 20.
Yeah,
certified.
probably a little more. Michelle, closer to 25.
So right around $90,000 average per year.
Yeah, I would say 25.
How
So
many-
yes,
Okay, how many students do we have?
200 and 212. Thank you. Oh, thanks,
212,
Scott.
okay. So 212 and you have 20, okay, 19 regular teachers, right? Counting the kindergarten teacher.
Yeah, there's 2 kindergarten teachers.
Okay, so that's not a lot of kids per class, I mean, per grade, per class. I mean, what's your average class size?
Yeah, well, we have the breakout of grade number of students per grade. I don't have it by
So there would
class.
be 2 classes per grade, right?
2 classes per grade.
And what was the breakdown of that, if you don't mind?
Of how many students per grade.
Yes, please.
Kindergarten has 29, first grade has 16, second grade has 27, third grade has 18, fourth grade has 23, fifth grade has 16, sixth grade has 26, seventh grade has 21, eighth grade has 24.
So the largest class is about 14 kids.
Yeah, I don't know if they're split perfectly even, but
So why-
something like that.
So why is the school adamant about keeping two classes per grade when they're the largest average? Our largest group is 14 in a class.
Yeah.
Teachers are certified to teach better than 20 kids, and they have a paraprofessional now with them as well, don't they? Or they
Not every classroom has a
Not every
paraprofessional.
class?
Not every class.
About how many, please?
Michelle, 2 classes?
That's it, just 2?
Yep.
Okay, well, that's good, but, you know, I'm a graduate of Kent Center many moons ago. 52 of us graduated and there were 2 teachers. Each teacher had 26 students, and they had no problems with them. I have a problem spending a lot of money. I'm all for education. I don't see why the teachers can't handle the class load at one class per grade. I just think that it's expending a lot of money that we don't have to spend. And I honestly don't believe whoever's projection that we're going to grow 24% in the next 2 years? 8 years. Okay, so why are we spending the money for 8 years when we don't need to?
Yeah.
Mike, one thing I just want to point out, you know, if you combine, you know, you take like one of the classes that are split into 2 classes of 16. If you combine those classes, that's 32 kids in a class. So there is a little bit of a window there where, you know, the class is a little smaller than optimal, but if you combine them, it's going to be way over optimal. And the reason that we don't want to go through and start taking like a 3rd grade teacher out and then trying to replace them the next year, taking a 5th grade teacher out the year after that, is it's just not good for the, you know, educational quality that we're providing at Kent Center School. It's just, it creates more of like a high turnover, low scale type environment. These are professionals. They spend a lot of time learning their subject material for their grade level. And to go in and just start pulling things apart because there's a couple of small classes there are a couple in there that could be combined successfully. But to do that randomly and just have to shift it around every year, I think would cause more harm than good. It's being penny wise and pound foolish, I think, in that case.
Okay, well, I disagree with the penny wise, pound foolish thing, but the highest grade number is 27.
29
29
in kindergarten.
in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Okay, so next year, they will be split in half. Why not, just as a suggestion, where the numbers are over 22, or again, I know teachers in the past have handled 25 easily. Now, again, if you have such a large class, then you have the paraprofessionals, or you have, you know, you have another teacher. I don't agree with paying people for doing, 6 kids, 7 kids, I just can't believe that that they're getting that much better of an education than they would with more kids. I'll never understand that, and you're spending my money and your money.
Yeah, Mike, it's my money too.
And your money, and so what is this 4.8 million almost, right? 800?
Yep.
What is this for? Divide that by 212. I didn't even have the number, so I can't tell you how much it's costing us per student.
30
some odd
30
thousand.
some odd thousand.
30 some odd thousand per student, okay? And I see that there are, I think, 14 full pay and 7 partial pay kids
Yes,
who are
there's,
not from town.
yes, there's 40,
And they pay 4,500,
yes.
okay? It's costing us 30,000 and we're charging 4,500.
Can I,
Is
Mike,
that-
before we go on to that, can I just make a comment on a couple of your other questions?
Sure.
So I think one thing to keep in mind is that the education requirements from when you and I went through Kent Center School, the requirements that are put on our school and our teachers by the state of Connecticut, by the state education,
Mhm.
is vastly different than it was when you and I were kids. Every year, there's more and more requirements
Mhm.
put on the teachers, on the administration. So I think while I understand the school population was much larger when you graduated, it was much larger when I graduated. The dynamic and the requirements are vastly different. And I think it's something that we have to keep in mind. I think we recognize we have some small classrooms, but the 16 in first grade, next year, there'll be 30, 29.
Right.
Okay, in first grade.
Mhm.
So if we were to eliminate one of those teachers this year, and then there's 30, then we need to hire another teacher, because by contract, 29 students is too much for one teacher.
What does their contract say?
I think it's 25,
Okay.
25.
Okay, I understand that. Now, what does, I think 2 finance board meetings ago, the number that teachers are certified to teach that many?
Well,
I think that number came up in the Board of Finance meeting.
of how many,
That teachers, to be a certified teacher,
yeah.
they are certified to teach 22 or 25 students?
Well, that doesn't have anything to do with their certification level. It has to do with their contract. The maximum number of students is in the teacher's contract, not how they're certified.
Okay, so if that's in their contract, then they must be certified to teach them, no?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So they're certified to teach 25 students. So you have 1 grade out of 9 where you have more than that, or 2.
We have 3.
Okay, 26, 27, and 29.
Yeah. Oh, 22. I misspoke. It's not 25 students. It's 22, or the contract is 22 students, not 25.
Okay,
I'm being corrected.
so having a paraprofessional is not doable for that? They have to be certified to teach that number? That's
For
it?
that,
And
yes.
And the paraprofessional doesn't, whether they have 7 students or 20 students, a paraprofessional does not make a difference.
Well, a paraprofessional operates under the guidance of a teacher. They can't
Okay.
have their own classroom
I'm
solo.
not saying that, but the paraprofessional is in the classroom with the teacher and the students, correct?
In 2 of our classrooms.
So when there are the larger numbers, is that where the paraprofessionals are?
No.
No?
No.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
paraprofessionals are there for certain special cases.
I'm sorry, with your mask.
I believe the paraprofessionals are there for certain special cases. And what you're essentially arguing then is just replacing a teacher with a paraprofessional. You're talking same number of people.
Well, what is a paraprofessional there for now? Just to help with certain kids?
In some cases, yes.
Okay, so it doesn't make sense to me. The money, what we're charging for people to come from out of town, it just doesn't add up. You're charging people way less than it costs us to teach them just to get more numbers. Okay, don't let the kids come in with for that cheap if that makes our numbers so much that we need more teachers.
Yeah, so we can address that.
Okay, well, that's all I really have to say about it. The numbers don't add up, and if you're bringing kids in for 1/8 of the cost of what it takes us to teach them, then don't bring them in and don't make us have more teachers. That's all I really have to say.
So Mike, I can
Thank you,
address
Mike.
that before you sit down.
Yeah.
Is that okay, Nancy? Do you want
I'm
me to
sorry?
address that?
Yeah, Mike can go ahead and sit down and you can still address it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
So when the new tuition rate was set, we looked at all of the other tuition in the surrounding region. And we are right on par. We are not the lowest. I'm sorry, we're not the, where do we fall, Michelle? We are the highest. Okay. So we charge more than any of the other 5 towns in Region 1 for tuition. So, you want me to keep going or you don't want to hear anymore? So what my point is while the math says, if you take 4.8 million and you divide it by the number of kids, it's 30 some odd $1,000, right?
And I'm not saying it's all because of the teachers'
But
salaries.
Right, but what we're saying is it doesn't cost, every additional student into that building doesn't cost another $30,000. We have to pay the electric bill every month, regardless of how many kids are in the building. We have to pay, our maintenance and our building fee, like everything that we pay to operate our building, including teacher salaries. But the other thing that we have in place is an application process for all tuition students. And so if there were ever a situation where there was a tuition student who applied, who would create a situation where we needed to have another teacher in that classroom, we wouldn't accept that student. We don't have to, there's an application process. We don't have to accept tuition students.
So Mike.
Okay, I do.
We don't want to make this into a
Okay, I'm
debate.
just, one more thing.
Okay.
One more thing.
Wrap
Okay.
it up, please.
I understand that you have the cost of the building, but if you're only teaching half the kids, shut down half the school. Stop heating the whole school. It's a big enough building. And if you only have 1 class per grade, you can do it. Okay, so you can cut your costs that way too.
Like, let me just to reiterate what Jen said, that I think actually our cost per student is closer to 26 when you do the division, but it doesn't cost that much to add another student. And every other town in the region that has a tuition policy has looked at this, and our tuition policy explicitly states that we are not allowed to take a student in if the cost of educating that student will exceed the cost of tuition. Most of those costs in that cost per student are baked in, their infrastructure. I don't think it's really practical to shut down half the school. I don't, but the other point I'd like to make though, Mike, is that the reason we feel that it's worth trying to bridge some of those smaller classes is because the school, is the heart of the town. And as soon as the school starts to decline in enrollment and, it makes the town less attractive to potential families moving in, and it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. So we certainly recognize the need that if we are on a long-term trend of decline, that we will start reducing teachers. We don't want to go in and start picking a 3rd grade teacher out and then trying to replace her the next year. We just think that will lead to a poor outcome. It won't get anything that any of us are looking for. We think that it's worth trying to keep that school vibrant to keep the town vibrant. The school is the heart of the town.
So I don't know if we have any additional information to add at this point. I mean, I think we're starting to rehash the same.
I agree.
The same things.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, just if I might add something on this in terms of just what the Board of Finance, how we've looked at this, and I think we heard the same thing on road repairs, et cetera. There's the big issue, of course, is this year, after 2 years of the pandemic are the economic forces which frankly are causing very serious concerns for the residents, as serious as the consequences of the pandemic have been. And I think we as a Board of Finance have tried this year to hold things in. So in response to the school thing, we did go back to the school board ultimately with a recommendation that they take a reduction. And as a matter of fact, you heard some pushback from the school on that in terms of, and if you look at that budget, it's basically a flat budget. We've tried to do as much as we can and as a policy to take the pressure off of raising the mill rate for everybody in a year in which you've got serious cost of living issues to deal with. And as a result, we've had to be very restrained, whereas in a frankly more robust year economically, we might have let some of these things result in large spending increases, or at least moderate ones, and we haven't. So we've tried to kind of strike a balance. And I think given the circumstances, I think we've done a pretty good job of that, all in. So even on the school thing, when we push back, but the bigger issue on the school thing is not, can you whack 10% out of it? Because what is that in terms of the size of the budget? But rather, I think we've had over a number of years restraint on it, mindful of the fact that you do have this bumpy landscape of how many kids are in a class. And so what you're not seeing are these big raises in budgets, even in inflationary times. And I think that's kind of the balance we've tried to strike, to be, frankly, responsive to the concerns that we're hearing from people in this community who just don't feel that this year, if we can do things to keep the pressure off of the mill rate, that we should.
Thank you, Jason. Please come up to the microphone.
As far as just the next year's,
Tell us.
oh, I'm Anna Duram. As I have 2 kids at Kent Center School. As far as the next years, maybe the next couple years, I think it is so important to have that extra support at Kent Center. Honestly, for our kids' emotional growth. I think the teachers need it. I think taking away staff is going to put a strain on the teachers. It's going to put a strain on the kids. I think removing a much needed program as far as an intervention program, such as a reading intervention program, the kids need that. I mean, they've been 2 years in masks or at home. I know our kids need that extra help right now. I also, like Scott said, Kent Center it's where it starts for this whole town. That's where we all start and grow up. And I think it's just so important to reconsider this if that's something that you guys can do. So that's all I have to say as a parent. So,
Thank you,
Thank
Anna.
you.
Everybody, Matthew Winter, 85 Kent Cornwall Road. It would be tremendously helpful for me as a resident and as a citizen if you would make your meetings available virtually. All of the commissions in town are recording their meetings and making them available on the website, and you guys don't. So I think you're required now to do that. So can you do that?
We're
Yeah.
actually not required because we're not part of the town government, but we have been considering that for a little while, and we are looking.
But you're part of the state, right? I mean, it's a law.
I don't believe that it is a law for us
Okay.
to record the meetings, but we are looking into doing it, Matt. I think it is a good idea.
Anybody else in here have any questions? Okay. Barbara, is there anybody online?
No, I don't see anything in the chat or any hands raised.
There's a hand raised.
Oh,
That's my hand that's raised, Elizabeth Bernard, 315 South Kent Road. I am also a teacher at Kent Center School, a former student of Kent Center School, and hopefully will be sending my own children there within the next few years. There's a lot of talk about how we're in unprecedented times right now, and that is 100 completely % true within our schools. We're seeing students with higher academic needs because they have lacked per se normal school year for many years. The students who are coming in to the younger grades basically have never had a real school year until this year. Teachers, I have seen, including myself, under much more pressure than any normal year. Teachers breaking down in tears, supporting each other, having to cover each other's classrooms. It is unprecedented times we're in, and I truly believe that taking a staff member away from Kent Center School will not only have huge impacts on my colleagues and I, but also the children. Thanks.
Miranda Lovato.
Hi, yeah, my name's Miranda. We're at 1 Macedonia Road. I just want to say, I have a daughter who's in 1st grade now. She started in kindergarten, kind of in the thick of COVID. And she's also one of the youngest for her grade. And she really struggled, especially with reading. And she got a substantial amount of support from reading intervention from those special teachers that came in. And this year she has made kind of unprecedented growth, I think, because she has had that extra support. And I just kind of wanted to say that I think it's so important, especially after the past couple of years, that these kids have the support that they need. It certainly has helped with her reading and just other areas as well. I just feel fortunate, and I hope that can continue to be the case for other kids in the next couple of years, that they also have that support that they need. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Do you see anyone else?
Okay. One last call in the room. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There is a hand up now, Abigail Smith.
Yes, hi, Abigail Smith Hanby, 162A Macedonia. And I just wanted to represent the young kids who are in a learning environment unlike anyone has ever seen. And comparing this to any other time is, I don't think, responsible. And I also just want to add that the context in which they are learning, the way in which they're getting information, the stress that they are under, taking away any support is egregious, especially during this time. Thank you.
Steve Penner.
Yes, hey, it's Steve Penner at 120 Fuller Mountain Road. I have 2 kids at Kent Center right now. I'm a graduate of Kent Center as well. I'm also not in support of reducing Kent Center's budget and possibly eliminating staff to support intervention for reading. Both our children have had to use the reading intervention. It not only benefits kids, but it also benefits the teachers there, allows them to focus on the classroom while these kids, can get help on their own, one-to-one. And after living through this pandemic and everyone showing support for teachers who have been heroes throughout this whole last 2 years. I think it's kind of a slap in the face to turn around and ask them to slash staffing. So again, I'm not in support of asking them to reduce their budget by $80,000. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Kaczynski, I think.
That's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Jared. I'm the new director of Park and Rec for the town of Kent. And I've only been here for about 3 months now, but I've gotten to work with a number of children in Kent Center School over the past, actually every day of the past 3 months. And previously, I've been working in Park and Recreation for about 15 years. So I can tell you from 15 years of experience that this past year, I've never had quite the interactions I've had with children, and behavioral issues from not having been together as often, learning issues from not having had a traditional classroom experience, social interaction issues almost on the daily for those very same reasons. And, experiencing that through our after school program and in the other programs that we've run, I can't say more emphatically that, cutting the budget and or reducing staff, it couldn't possibly be a worse time to do that. And like I said, I could say that from firsthand experience working with these children, and they need all the support they can get to, foster, all the experiences that they haven't had over the past 2 years. And, so I just wanted to say that I'm an unbiased observer. I don't have kids in the school, but I have worked with them closely, and I feel pretty strongly about it. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Anybody else, Barbara?
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments?
Now a hand is raised. Julia Neff.
Hi, this is Julia Neff. I'm at 82 Beardsley Road. My 2 boys have been at Kent Center School the last 2 years. We moved here in the middle of COVID. And having had my children at another school prior to Kent Center, where they each had at least 24 children in their classrooms and even more in their grades, it's been tremendous, the difference in their education and how much better they've both done moving to Kent Center School and having such low student to teacher ratios. And it's one of the main reasons why we decided to stay in Kent and move our residency here full time. And I felt like it's been particularly notable that we've had this wonderful experience here when our kids have been going to school in masks, and we've been living through these unprecedented times, going back and forth between remote learning and in person. So I think it would really be a shame to take away any funding from Kent Center School, particularly any that would remove support staff there now. Thank you.
No? Okay.
But as soon as I say that, they'll be.
Well, sometimes it takes a minute for people to do that. Anyone here wish to say anything else?
Just one other thing, just for clarity's sake. We've heard a few adjectives. I'm sorry, this is Jason Wright again. We've heard a few adjectives applied both to the schools, et cetera, in terms of slashing and whatever. And I think I just want to make it clear, again, that both the Board of Finance, and I'm not going to speak for the selectmen, but I don't believe we've slashed spending in the school. we have certainly moderated the increase, but we're not cutting, frankly, in an absolute way, the school budget. You know, the question was how much more was going to be applied to the budget, and we concluded that in a tough year for people who are, again, feeling the cost of living thing, that this was a year in which if we could just restrain the increase, that it would benefit the people of the town to do that. So we're not trying to, frankly, you know, savage the school budget. What we're doing is just restraining how much bigger it is this year.
Thank you. Any other, oh, we've got one?
There's someone online, Bailey Corso.
Hi, yes, my name is Bailey Corso. I live in Kent, and I have 2 children at Kent Center School. I just wanted to back up what a couple other people said, and I think that if, like, there's a lot of other places to not add money or to take money from, and doing it to the children is absolutely absurd. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anyone else? Barbara? Last chance. Anyone else here? Jean? Okay, then we will go ahead and adjourn the public hearing, or close the hearing. And thank you all for coming. You're welcome to stay for the Board of Finance meeting if you wish. That will resume now. So are Jim and Fran still on?
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
I'm here.
So discussion board? Do you all have a copy of the agenda?
Jim has his mic open. Is there something you wanted to say, Jim Blackadder?
No, I'm just confirming that I'm still with us.
Jim?
I'm here.
So are we on Zoom or are we here?
I'm zooming.
Okay, it's both now.
Okay, all right, so Jim or Fran, I know you both got the agenda. Do you wish to discuss any of the items in section 7 of the agenda relating to the cap plan, the budget, transfer to the cap plan, tax collection rate, revenue projection, or mill rate projection?
No, I'm good with that.
I'm good with that also.
Jim, we can't hear you. Are you muted?
Well, it doesn't appear to be that I am.
I hear him.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Nancy's muted.
Hear you.
Sounds like- Yeah, there we go.
We can hear you, Jim.
Okay, good.
Okay. Do you have something else you want to share?
Are you talking to me, Jim? No, I do not. No.
Anyone here wish to touch on any of these topics this evening?
No, I think we've basically spent the last few weeks on these, so I think we're pretty familiar with them, and
Yeah, we're
it
yeah.
reflects where we are. Right?
Okay, all right. So this budget will go on then to the town budget vote, which is 2 weeks from tonight at 7 o'clock. Also know that the May meeting status for the May 11th meeting. I do not believe that we will need to have that tentative meeting. So if you've penciled it in on your calendars, you can take it off. And we will see you in 2 weeks if you choose to attend the budget vote. It's an in-person town meeting.
You want a motion to adjourn?
Or do you want to let Jim do it?
Jim, would you like to make the motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Good.
Night all.
Good night. Thank you.